Hey everybody, I hope you're doing well today. My name is Brad Cartwright and the following video is a free preview from bradcartwright.com, a website designed for IB economics students all around the world so that you know you will have all of the information you need to feel empowered for a unit test, a semester exam, or ultimately the IB exam at the end of your 2-year journey. So take a look at the website when you get a chance, and in the meantime, enjoy this free preview. All right, just to get started, let's take a look at the 6 real-world issues that the IB has set up, through which we will look at all of our studies of microeconomics, macroeconomics, market power, and the global economy, okay? So what's the point here? Well, any good curriculum is set up around some really key essential questions, the kinds of questions that live sort of on the top layer of all of the inquiry that goes on underneath it. And the IB has done this for us, and it's really, really cool. So there's 6 questions, 2 of which are going to apply to our studies of microeconomics, which includes market power. If you are an HL student, we'll apply it there as well. Then there are 2 questions that apply to our studies of macroeconomics, and then the last 2 questions apply to our studies of the global economy, which looks at international trade and development around the world. Okay, so let's take a look at what the questions are. And I'll read through them, and then we'll talk about which ones apply to which areas of the curriculum. Okay, so question number 1. How do consumers and producers make choices in trying to meet their economic objectives? Pretty cool. Number 2, when are markets unable to satisfy important economic objectives? And then, does government intervention help? Number 3, why does economic activity vary over time, and why does this matter? Number 4, how do governments manage their economy, and how effective are their policies? Number 5, how are the winners and losers of the integration of the world's economies, or who are the winners and the losers of the integration of the world's economies? And lastly, why is economic development uneven? Okay, so if you look at those, what you'll see is that these first 2 right here, these first 2 above that line, are going to apply to our studies of microeconomics, because microeconomics is a study of the interaction between consumers, producers, and then the government, which you'll see as we go through this course. I'm going to create this huge metaphor that the government is actually like the parents of a household who has only 2 children, consumers and producers, okay? And the government's always involved in their lives whether they like it or not, just like if you're a kid in a house, your parents are always involved in your life whether you like it or not, okay? So those first 2 questions apply to our studies of microeconomics, okay? The second 2 questions apply to our studies of macroeconomics. And what macroeconomics is a look at how countries' economies function. So micro is like me and you going and buying, one item at a store. The market for, stylists, okay. So that's microeconomics. Macroeconomics is looking at, and I live here in Chile, it's like all of the economic activity going on in a particular country, in this case, Chile. Or maybe you live in South Africa or Tanzania or Nepal, and there's a macro world that the government is in charge of there, right? Because the governments are parents of economies. So these second 2 questions, why does economic activity vary over time, and why does this matter? And how do governments manage their economy, and how effective are their policies, touch on our studies of macroeconomics, okay? And then lastly, these 2 questions here apply to our studies of the global economy, which is the last unit that you get into in your 2-year course of study. It usually happens in your senior year of your course of studies. And what that looks like is at the interaction of the macro economies, right? So Chile, Argentina, Brazil, great. They all have their little macro worlds, but what happens when they start trading? What happens if a Chileno wants to buy Argentinian wine? Well then all of a sudden there's an interchange, an exchange of goods and services and money flowing over the border, over the Andes Mountains here, between Argentina and Chile. So how does that affect the economies at different places, right? And therefore, who are the winners and who are the losers? And then the other question is, why is economic development uneven? And if you think about it, that's a really, really good question, because if you've had the joy and the luxury, as I have, to be able to travel this world, you will see all sorts of levels of development around the world, and all of them are based on so many factors. They might be based on, they're based on many, many factors, but there's such a variance of it. And so IB economics drives us to understand is, why is economics so uneven? I've lived in the United States, which is where I was born. I've lived in the Dominican Republic. I've lived in Nicaragua, and now I live here in Chile. Well, the United States is this huge, robust, massive economy that's very, very developed. Nicaragua is very much undeveloped. It is considered a developing nation. In fact, it's the third poorest country in this hemisphere of the Americas. And what about Chile? Chile is like somewhere in the between. Like, some things here are like super slick, more advanced than you would find in the most advanced economies of the United States or Europe. And then there's some things that just don't work. Like, you see like incredible innovations here of technology, and then you go to the countryside and you're seeing, an ox and a plow still. So, Chile is somewhere in between. And so these six real world issues focus and delve in and create the inquiry, create the curiosity that we need to have to understand the world around us. And that's what's so cool. That's what you have to understand. You're not just studying some book. You're not just studying some set of, diagrams and vocabulary words and all that stuff. No, you're learning about human behavior. Economics is the merging of philosophy, the merging of mathematics, the merging of psychology, sociology, all into one. And when you study it and you see how it's applied, not only do you understand how it is that people behave economically, but you start to see that economics and economic philosophy and the economic view of leaders creates what? The politics of the world around us. And that is what makes studying IB economics so, so cool. After this 2-year course of study, you are going to be one of the most well-informed human beings on this planet. All right, so there they are, the 6 real-world issues upon which sits all of our studies of IB economics. All right, my friends, here we go. We're rolling on. We'll see you in the next video.